The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
It is witchcraft, I gotta tell you. It would take witchcraft for anyone to believe a word that Obama says. His true legacy is the destruction of the Democrat Party. It's not just that Hillary lost the election. Forget the popular numbers, because I can argue with that. You know, what they're all saying is save your Confederate money, the South will rise again. That they won the popular vote, therefore Trump is an illegitimate president. I could argue, and rationally, by the way, that the differential of several million votes can be seen in the number of illegal aliens that Mr. Fez has run into the United States of America. How many millions of illegal aliens from Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and the Middle East has this man flooded into this country who voted in the last election? Millions, I would say, wouldn't you? After all, didn't the Democrats under Harry Reid fight to make certain that there would be no voter ID laws? Why would they do that? Even Trinidad, a small island nation, has voter ID laws. I know a person from Trinidad said, what, are you crazy? He said, how could you not have a voter ID law? How do you know how many times someone's voting or where they're from? I said, how, when you have a corrupt Harry Reid and a corrupt Hillary Clinton and a corrupt Democrat machine that lives off the welfare state and floods people in to build up the voter rolls, why would they want voter ID? So you could argue that the 3-4 million differential that Hillary won in the popular vote was based almost entirely upon illegal aliens voting, and multiple votes, by the way. The most important story of all of them is Obama hinting that something's going to happen and he's going to run for a third term. That snake, that crypto pro-Islamist snake, gave a speech that was shocking where he said that if he had run again, he could have beaten Trump. He's sending a message out. And we're all, let us say, if not quizzical, terrified of what the snake is planning with the New World Order. Listen to clip number 2 on the Savage Nation. Listen carefully.
I am confident in this vision because I'm confident that if I had run again and articulated it, I think I could have mobilized a majority of the American people to rally behind it.
Mobilized?
I know that in conversations that I've had with
who? Michelle?
People around the
Your
country.
mother-in-law?
Even some people who disagreed with
Who,
me,
your butler?
they would say the vision, the direction that you point towards is the right one.
Oh, that's right. Flood America with useless immigrants who don't work. Increase the food stamp rolls by 10.7 million people, a 32% jump. Bring in Islamists who are not vetted. Really good job. One terrorist event after another. Oh, yeah, we all want your vision. That's what we want, Mr. Obama. We want your vision. We all want to become Beirut or Lebanon itself. That's what we can't wait to see is internecine warfare in America. You're great. You turned blacks against the police. You did a super job, Obama. This man is crazy, but he's not finished yet. Meanwhile, in gun-controlled Chicago, there were multiple deaths, 750-plus homicides in 2016. Can you believe what's going on in this country? Obama says he could have won the election. He could have beaten Trump if he had run again. First of all, the data doesn't support that. That's number one. Number two, his agenda is why so many people came out to vote for the businessman. Why would they vote for Donald Trump? Say it again. Number one, war with Mexico. Number two, no more Muslims from, let us say, countries that have civil problems. Isn't that what you voted for? And number three, you want the jobs brought back in the Rust Belt primarily, right? Didn't you want your factories brought back? You want the jobs to stay here. You don't want them bleeding out to Mexico and to China. That's what you voted for. There were three main issues. There weren't more than three issues. All the rest is gravy. Now, I personally told you in the whole year running up to the election that my number one issue, and still is, national security. I'll repeat it over and over and over again. Obama has decimated the military, destroyed the morale of the military, depleted the, let me use the exact right word in the military, he's depleted the replacement parts for our aircraft. He has decimated our stocks of weaponry. He has destroyed the morale of the military, putting in incompetence at every level of leadership, and run men out of the military who are real warriors. He's run the Spartans out of the military. There are some left, but man, their morale has been just destroyed by this crypto freak. And the fact is that they're already feeling better now that Trump has won. He put in Mattis into the Defense Department, who's a genuine combat veteran. He put a general into Homeland Security. Isn't that better than the lawyer who's running Homeland Security? You know that if this guy, Jay Johnson, who's running Homeland Security, was working for a corporation, the board of directors would have fired him 2 years ago. After one terrorist event after another that slipped through his fingers. Why would you keep a man who was letting things happen that he was put there to stop? Why? Well, you figure it out. So those things alone mean a lot to me. You know, remember after the election, I said I had a friend who said, it was an interesting statement, and I got a lot of email on it. I had a friend who said to me that after Trump won, she felt as though a new portal had opened into a new world. She felt that she went into a new world had opened for her. I felt the same exact way, and millions of others feel, a sense of relief that is hard to describe. I was sitting here, I know people in the media, really big people, not a lot, a few, the real ones. Every one of them feared that if Hillary won, they were going to be hounded, not only out of the business, but even worse. They feared that. They don't fear it anymore. I sleep better at night. I don't go to sleep worrying about a Eastern European-style government hunting me down. I don't sit here worrying about a car coming in the middle of the night and snatching me off the street. I feared that under Hussein. I feared that would happen under Hillary. I don't fear it under Trump. So to me, it's a great world that we're living in. It's that simple. I don't really want to tell you what to say, but one of Obama's great legacies is that he has destroyed the Democrat Party. Do you know what happened in the election in addition to the presidency? Whether you like me or don't like me, the facts are the facts. He decimated the Democrat Party for a good number of years, thank God. Oh, yeah. The Democrats lost more than 1,000 seats under this phony, narcissistic man named Barack Obama. 1,000 seats, and he says he would have beaten Trump. Read the analysis. He says he could have won a third term. Every level during that election, this Democrat Party suffered huge losses at every level during Obama's West Wing tenure. 1,042 state and federal Democratic posts were destroyed by this liar. You know, you can only take so many lies for so long. Angela Merkel, for example, flooded in 1 million Muslims into Germany. Do you know what's going on in Germany? It's exactly what Obama wants to happen here in America. He wants to destroy the cohesion of this nation, the same way that crypto-fascist Nazi Angela Merkel is destroying Germany with her Muslim brethren. And they will never let go of their agenda. One thing you got to know is that the Islamist socialist agenda will not go away quietly in the night. Now, Obama says that he could have easily beaten Trump if he had run again. He's a con man, as you well know. He said, I am confident in this vision that if I had run again and articulated, I could have mobilized. That's an Al Sharpton word, mobilized. Mobilized and won again. Now, the words confident in this vision are very telling. Con man, confidence man. Obama's a classic con man. He actually believes his own lie. But the fact of the matter is, he destroyed the Democrat Party. He couldn't have won a third term. The Democrats lost over 1,000 seats since this character was foisted upon us way back in the dark ages of 2008. A net loss of 1,042 state and federal Democratic posts. Go ahead, liberals. Tell me why. All over, because of racism? You got that one ready, don't you? The R word's already rolling off your tongue, and you're not even from Cambridge. A net loss of 1,042 state and federal Democratic posts, including the presidency, governorships, congressional and state legislative seats, since this man became president. Every level destroyed. Then Trump wins. Democratic U.S. Senate seats fell from 55 to 46. under Obama. The share of the House plummeted from 256 to 194. And let me tell you something. Even though there's been a tidal wave in the other direction, in the media, nothing has changed. The people who run the media are more liberal than they've ever been. They haven't seen the light. They don't care about you. They still think you're the deplorable. And yet even Google, one of the most successful companies in America's history, is smart enough to adapt because they know otherwise they will die. These other industries are not smart. Google has hired an entire division of conservative outreachers. Did you know that? They know which way the wind blows, and they know the wind is blowing to the right. So Google creates a conservative outreach division. Meanwhile, the old line media is getting rid of conservatives as fast as they can, thinking that Hillary Clinton won, and they're going to curry favor with her. Democratic governorships became a rarity during this 8-year period, slipping from 28 to 16. But again, go tell that to the people in the old world media. You know, it's like the talkies versus the silent movies. When the talkies came along, talking pictures, the silent film stars said, them talkies will never work. No one's going to go to them talking pictures. Right. Well, you got people in the media right now who are like running silent movie studios. They still are saying, no, they want to see Buster Keaton miming. They'd rather see someone mime Obama's words. So he goes on and says, I'm confident in this vision that if I'd run again, I could have mobilized and beaten Donald Trump. Well, there are Democrats who disagree with him, by the way. We're not even a national party at this point, said one of the reps. Tim Ryan, Democrat of Ohio, said, we're not even a national party at this point, as he made a failed run at the House Minority Leader position. He tried to beat Nancy Battle-Axe Pelosi. He said, we have some support on the coast, but we've lost the support of Middle America, and we've got to make some changes, so I'm pulling the fire alarm here because the House is on fire. Don't tell that to the octogenarian Nancy Pelosi. No, sirree, Bob. Harry Reid said 2020, in the 2020 Democratic field will resemble an old folks home. That's Harry Reid. During a meeting earlier this month, an aide asked Reid what he thought about Vice President Joe Overbite Biden, saying he's open to running for president in 2020. And he asked if he would support him. Reid said, well, it depends on who's running. It appears we're going to have an old folks home. We've got Elizabeth Warren, she'll be 71. Biden will be 78. Bernie Sanders will be 79. Can you believe this? Now, there's nothing wrong with being old and wise, but being old and stupid is another story. When you've just destroyed your party with your party line, what you do is you change your pitch, but not them, because senility sets in. And if you can't change when you have senility. The brain becomes rigid. The thinking's rigid. So they keep putting out the same thing. The same story over and over again. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. It is a big lie that Obama says he would have beaten Trump if he had run again. A complete, total lie. Revisionist history. Over 1,000 seats have been lost since this character was foisted upon us. And I don't think we need to beat it up again. He just cannot stop shilling for himself. There are other stories. Obama stabbed Israel in the back and exposed himself for the crypto-Islamist supremacist that he really is. We have the Powers UN speech. And there are other big stories out there. I don't think we have to get overly excited about them. I guess it's a time to talk about belief. I've been busily writing. I guess I could tell you what book is coming out. You know the God book's coming out next year, September, October, right? I told you that. I've been working on it. It's good. It's growing. You know what's amazing about books? People don't understand something. If your mind is active and you're thinking about a certain subject, I don't mean every second because no one could do that, and you record what you are thinking on a subject and or type it out, a book will grow. You don't have to sit down from the beginning or right beginning to the end. I also have a very interesting announcement to make, which is that I have a book about Donald Trump coming out at the end of February, early March. It will set off shockwaves. That's all I can tell you. It's being rushed to press, but I'm working on it because the Trump administration is still forming. And you say, well, how can you do a book on an administration that hasn't formed yet? You'll see. You'll see. You'll see what position I'm taking. You may or may not know. was reading another story not related to anything. I loved going into the neocon ventriloquist story who want war with Russia, but I don't know if today's the day for it. Neocon ventriloquists want war with Russia. I think it's one of my best statements of the year. What's this big thing with Russia, by the way? What's this big... Let's say that there's truth to it for a moment, that they hacked some of the people in the DNC. Let's say that is true, right? They're not even alleging that they changed anything, just that they saw the emails. So what's the problem here? What do you mean they hacked the election? In other words, they found out what a rotten thief she actually is? And how evil her entire party is? Look, the first allegation of Russian interference was originally dismissed by Obama and his stooges as highly unlikely and laughable. And then it was only after Clinton lost, it became, it's possible that they hacked it. Now suddenly it's a tsunami being put out by the neocon ventriloquists, both liberals and so-called Republicans together, by the way, because they all want war. They want war. Do you understand that? Do you understand what I'm saying to you? When I say neocon, they're identical to the liberals in the sense that they want war with Russia. Whether they want a Cold War or they want a shooting war, they want war with Russia for their own reasons. It's a neocon ventriloquist trick. They can't let go. Do you really want nuclear war with Russia? You idiots, you? You stupid fools, you. Here's a man who won the Nobel Peace Prize the minute he became president for no reason, because the commies who run the UN and the Nobel Peace Prize Committee are one and the same. They're all the same. They go to the same, let's say, I don't want to say pizzerias in Brooklyn, but you get the drift if you're into that story. Those in the UN who are given to that type of thing, and those in the UN who are given to that type of thing, probably go to the same pizzeria in Brooklyn. It's an in-joke that only the truly in people understand what I'm saying. In other words, the plain sick perverts in the UN and the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, they're the same people. They want war with Russia. Why? These are the same people who pretend to be in the peace business. Now they want war? I want to ask you another question. Who are the bigger phonies, liberals or conservatives? I know you say, wait a minute, how could you dare say that? Well, because I see such hypocrisy, it's frightening to even believe it. I hear conservatives in the media talking over and over again about how they do this and they do that, and the elites do this and the elites do that. And here you have conservatives with their own Gulfstream jet, living in mansions worth $100 million, saying like the elites do this and the elites do that, like they're Joe Sixpack. I've never seen anything like this. How do you people take this garbage? I ask myself. I know I can't take it anymore. I'm a rich guy. I've told you that. I worked from poverty. I have something. I worked for every dime I have. No one gave it to me, but I don't make believe that I'm poor. I don't come across like Joe Sixpack just to get you to listen to me. How can you buy that garbage? Well, what is a guy in talk radio who's very wealthy but an elite? By definition, we're all elite. If we're in the winner's circle, we're the elites. Don't you understand that? So how can we take an outsider position if we're really on the inside, is the question. We can't. So in other words, man is flawed. All men are flawed. We're all deceivers. We're all liars. We're all sinners. Didn't Jesus teach us that? The holiest day of the year, the Day of Atonement, it's called. Jews are supposed to fast and tell God what rotten individuals they are. Now, in churches on Sunday, the Christians basically confess, right? They go in and they say they're sorry for this, they're sorry for that, and then they go back to their regular lives. But if you actually analyze what the statements are, you tell me, if you're listening to this show, that none of you have committed any of this. When the Jew goes into the synagogue tonight for 24 hours, he sits there and he tells God about the sins he committed, as written by his forefathers. And he says, I apologize for my transgressions, for the sin that I've committed under duress or willingly. The sin I committed by hard-heartedness. The sin I have committed before you inadvertently. The sin that I committed with an utterance of the lips. The sin I committed before you with immorality. The sin I have committed for you openly or secretly. The sin I've committed before you with knowledge and with deceit. Before you through speech. Before you by deceiving a fellow man. Before you by improper thoughts. Before you by a gathering of lewdness. Before you by a verbal confession. Before you by disrespect for parents and teachers. Before you for the sins I've committed intentionally or unintentionally. For the sin I've committed before you by using coercion. By desecrating the divine name. by impurity of speech, by foolish talk, with the evil inclination. For the sin I've committed before you knowingly and unknowingly. And you ask then God to forgive you. But it goes on. It goes on for pages. The sin I've committed before you by false denial and lying. For the sin I've committed before you by a bribe-taking or bribe-giving hand. Hello, Hillary. For the sin which we have committed before you by scoffing. That's all of us in talk radio. We commit that sin every day. By evil talk about another. The sin I've committed before you in business dealings. Does that not affect anyone listening to the show? For the sin we've committed before you by taking or giving interest and by usury. By a haughty demeanor. Hello. By the prattle of our lips. By a glance of the eye. With proud looks. With impudence. And there's more. Scheming against a fellow man, passing judgment, casting off the yoke of heaven, a begrudging eye, by obduracy. Obduracy. Who's not obdurate listening to the show? By running to do evil, by tale-bearing, by swearing in vain, by causeless hatred, by embezzlement, by a confused heart. And you ask God to forgive you. So what I'm getting at is man commits sin by definition of being man. Man is a fallen creature. We're imperfect. So therefore, how do we expect our candidates to be above us? Do we expect them to be more than human? Well, what do we expect of them? I don't have an answer for that, but I know that they're just people, and as such, there are degrees of phoniness, there are degrees of evil. The only question for me, and has been from the minute I started to support Donald Trump, has been, where is my national security best? In whose hands is my national security? Trump or Clinton? We know that she will not stand for our borders, our language, or our culture. Now, on the other side, we have Trump, who says that he's going to stop bringing in Muslims. He hasn't said that recently because they beat it out of him. They beat out of him common sense. Everyone knows not to bring in people amongst whom, even if it's only 1%, there are 1% of them who are terrorists. There's no vetting of them whatsoever by the DHS, FBI, CIA. Zero. So we know a lot of them are going to come here and cause bombs and stuff to go off. Trump said once he would definitely not bring in, let Muslims come in, especially from those countries where there is terrorism, such as Syria. Now, look, maybe this is too esoteric or too unspecific. Maybe it's not emotional enough for you. We know that Obama has decimated virtually everything he's touched. Everything that's decent he has destroyed. We know that he's melted down the military. Let's start with national security. He's opened the border. He's brought in diseased immigrants. How can any poor person want illegal aliens here? I'll never understand. I don't care if you're black or white. How could you want this country flooded with illegal aliens when they're going to take the precious few, let us say, resources that should be available to our poor and needy and give it to people from another country? How in the world can you support this policy, I ask myself? Does that make sense? It makes no sense to me. That's why I'm a champion for America's borders, language, and culture. Irrespective of whether I'm a poor or rich man, because the poor look differently at the world than do the rich. The poor want what the rich have, and the rich don't want the poor to take it. It's always been that way. It will always be that way, no matter what Warren Buffett may say. I loved his tax returns the other day, speaking of that phony. Obama's good friend, Warren Buffett. He had the nerve to say, Trump doesn't know my taxes or what I pay. He said, why, I earned $11 million last year and I paid $1.9 million in taxes. Here, the richest man in the world, or one of them, earned $11 million last year. He earned about $11 million a day is what he really earned. Are you kidding me? You going to believe that guy? They get it all through other ways. Their companies pay for their airplanes, their yachts, their houses, their dental work, their tooth, whatever. It's all paid for by the corporation. Of course they don't pay taxes on it. The corporation pays it all. That's how that works. So don't believe them. I earned $11 million. Sounds like a lot of money to the average man, and it is. He earned about $11 million a minute, by my estimation. Paid $2 billion. What a great citizen. What a great patriotic citizen, I said to myself. So everyone is a liar. The whole world's filled with deceit and fraud. There's nothing you see in the media that's real. Not for 1 second. Just that some people are bigger liars than others. It's that simple. How much can you take of it? So that's my sermon today. My mind is not here anymore because my mind is already on the next world. It's the different world, and my mind is halfway there. For whatever reasons, I'm halfway there, halfway here. My mind's in the eternal world. You're not going to know God unless you know what sin is. Let me tell you that right now. I don't care about the boiled down fake new religions or the new Christianity or the new Judaism. I really don't care about that. Those are boiled down fake religious belief systems, because man is a flawed creature. We all know we commit sins by accident or on purpose. And without a religion to tell us we're not good people, the religion has no meaning. It's nothing. It's just 60s psychobabble, New Age philosophy of we're all great, no matter what we do is good. That's something a psych tells you. That's what you go to a shrink for, is dispensation. No matter what you did, he tells you it's okay because your father looked at you the wrong way when you're 1 year old. That's not what religion is supposed to do. Religion's supposed to give you red lights, green lights, and yellow lights. Never forget that. There are do's and not do's for mankind. See, in those days you could joke with people of other religions and everyone got along. Then a meanness came into this country like you cannot believe. An ill wind was brought in that hates every other religion, hates itself. Anyway, Trump faces challenges from within GOP to border wall and deportation. No kidding. That's a big story on Newsmax. Fellow party members, they don't want the wall. Oh, no, they want business as usual. And, of course, the neocon ventriloquists will trumpet that in the coming weeks and months. You'll hear the neocon ventriloquists who pose as conservatives saying that we don't need a wall, we don't need to deport anyone. You'll hear. But that they're true blue conservatives. You'll hear that. Well, what's conservative about not building a wall? Tell me what's conservative about not deporting the illegal aliens in prison. I said don't deport all the workers. I'm on record with that. I'm not a fool. But the fact of the matter is you can start by deporting the 28% of prisoners who are here illegally, who committed numerous felonies and got caught and convicted. Get rid of them. Throw them out of the country. Who's going to fight that? Well, a few groups. La Raza, number one. Number two, the prison guards associations. Very bad for business to empty the prisons out. So, you got a lot of forces in a big nation. You get it? Neocon ventriloquists, that should get your attention. There's an awful lot of them out there. Neocon ventriloquists. How did you put that together, Savage? How dare you create such an original syllogism? A neocon ventriloquist. And they do want war with Russia, of course. Many of them are stuck in the past. They cannot break out of the past. They came to, let's say, to life as pseudo-intellectuals during the era of Russian hysteria, anti-Russian hysteria. And although things got better, the neocon ventriloquists are now operating at full throttle. They dominate the foreign policy establishment. We all know that the Cold War has been over for a long time. We know that the Russians are not a threat to us at all. We know that they have a lot of nukes, but they're absolutely not threatening to nuke us. We all know that. So why do these neocon ventriloquists continue to yak about Putin being a combination of Stalin, Hitler, and, as someone said, that third-grade bully who put gum in their hair? Why do they completely demonize this man? Well, there's a lot of answers to that. A lot of it has to do with the fact that these people, these neocon ventriloquists, have frankly had their entire professional lives revolve around opposition to the Russians, and they can't get over it. And then when the Soviet Union collapsed, they weren't going to throw away their career, so they found new reasons to hate the Russians and to hate Putin. Be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. At this point, I think I've expressed myself politically as well as I'm going to do for the day. And I thought that maybe it's worth talking about the transcendent spiritual man and the animal soul, and how they're in constant conflict, and how our two souls have visions that are opposing each other, and that many of people crack up and think that they're schizophrenic from it. And of course, most psychiatrists, God bless them, they're smart people. They're not religious people by and large, and the psychiatrists get it all wrong. So if a person comes to them and says, "Oh, God, doctor, I have two feelings about it, two thoughts about everything." All right, so here's medication. So we'll kill one of your thoughts, and then you'll be a sane American, meaning a complete whack job. Then you can wind up having sex in the middle of the day on a rug or in the floor. You can use drugs, sex, rock and roll. You'll be an ordinary American, in other words, a complete mess. But you won't be divided anymore. So what is this mystical thing I'm trying to tell you? Do all religions teach this? I don't know about all religions. I don't see it in Buddhism. I don't think the Buddhists have ever been troubled by a duality of nature. I've read the Buddhist tractates. It's beautiful poetry. And it tries to steer people on the right course, the right path of life. It does it through poetry and writings. But the Orthodox, or shall I say actually the mystical Jews, who have looked into the soul, and you have to respect this. This is not the type that goes to the White House. This is not the type you see with Obama with a yarmulke on at one of the Jewish holidays. They don't even understand what I'm talking about. This is for you, the audience, the animal soul and the spiritual soul. And how they're, on one hand, you think that they're opponents and that you have to suppress the animal soul. But that's not what the teaching is. And this is where Judaism differs from Christianity in its core, in its philosophy. In its philosophical core, Judaism is different than Christianity because it does not say repress the animal soul. That's why some people said Jews are earthy people. Christians, I've noticed, said Jews are earthy people. What they don't understand is that in order to achieve divinity, both souls, even the animal soul, must equally spur this love for God. You have to take the animal soul and love your animal soul and turn it to the work of God. So the Talmud says, to love the Lord your God with all your heart means to love him with both inclinations, both souls equally. And then we learn that it is our job or our challenge to transform the animal soul into a consciousness that is an active partner in our divine service to God. Then they explain how this transformation should occur. So I hear all the cynics in the audience say, come on, cut the crap with the religion. I don't want to hear it. Stick to what you do, Mike. Get back to the humor. Stick to your politics. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the soul. Okay, fine. I get it. This is a cynical part of me. That's my animal soul. The cynical part of me that's mocking my own words through you by saying you're doing it, the cynic, that's my animal soul. It's mocking the godly side of me. So, you can go crazy thinking about it all. I get it. I can hear my grandmother, the atheist, saying to me what she would say. She didn't believe in God. They really didn't. It's funny. I came from a family of atheists in many ways. They were. I mean, my mother was religious, but not religious. She wasn't religious, but she believed in God. She was afraid of God. I knew, I could see it in her eyes and things that she did. She was a God. She taught me about God. She had enough tragedy in her life to know that there had to be something more than her on this earth. So anyway, I don't mean to give you the religious mumbo-jumbo and freak you out. You know, you want to hear Borders, language, culture, scorched earth. I'll do it. But I have to tell you that behind it, remember I said to you this is my last political book? And many of you think, yeah, he's just janking our chain. You'll see next year he'll do another one. It'll be Unscorched Earth. That's what you're saying, the cynic. Again, the animal, or the cynic, I can think like you do. The audience saying, no, he'll do another book. I want to do a book about God, so I've just given you a little bit of the beginning of it. I've just given you a taste of it because that's what's going on in me. The other book is writing itself. Do you get it? It started writing itself the day before publication. Ask any writer. Books write themselves. It's like an auto. It comes out of your head. It starts writing itself. Where does it come from? I don't know. It's a babbling brook. It's a clear spring. Did you ever walk in the country and find the spring that comes up from the earth and never dries up? Where does it come from? Same thing with a man or a human being, rather. We have ideas. Where do they come from? Don't be afraid of your ideas. I think a lot of mental problems, here I go again. I'll put my psychiatrist hat on for a minute. I believe in my lifetime I've discovered that a lot of mental problems come from repression. That people who repress their thoughts or ideas most strongly become crazier. The more you try to repress what you're actually feeling, the more disturbed you become, the more violent you can become. So what am I saying? Why not do it in the road? See, there's a little truth to the hippie philosophy. Watch where I'm going with this. I didn't say do it in the road. Here's the whole trick. Recognize that you feel like doing it in the road. Recognize that you have lust. Don't repress what you're thinking or feeling. Accept what you're thinking or feeling and don't act on it.
7. Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
None of this music appeals to me today. It's funny how you can tell by my, as a talk show host, I've got to do everything. I got to think of the music, produce the music. I'm not complaining. But then when I play it, if I don't like it, it tells me something about what I'm feeling. I don't want any rock and roll. I don't want the Beach Boys. I don't know what mood I'm in. I'm in a strange mood, like Obama's speech about domestic propagandists and talk radio is the reason that they lost the election. Yeah, it is the reason you lost the election. It is the reason you're going out in shame with your tail between your legs, because we exposed you for what we are. What do you think Scorched Earth did? It elected Donald Trump and it exposed you. That's right, that book. Let me get that book out. Let me talk to you 1 minute about my book, because if I don't, who will? Someone else is going to tell you about it? Rush Limbaugh is going to tell you about Scorched Earth? That changed the course of human events. This book elected Donald Trump. This book exposed the Democrat socialist machine for what it is. This book is the book that did it. This is the book that even the intelligentsia on the left said was the architectural plan for Donald Trump. That's right. Michael Savage predicted the chaos that is Obama's legacy. Does that make me a propagandist for pointing out the 8 years of division that Obama has given us? And I asked you before the election several simple questions. I asked you during the killing of cops across the land, which was going on a regular basis and is still going on as a result of that evil president of ours, because of the hatred he has expressed towards the police, did it not become, this nation not become sort of a third world nation of terror? Check yes. How many terror events do we have under him? Many. Riots? Do you remember? You forgot all the riots? Mobs? You forgot the mobs? You forgot Black Lives Matter? You forgot Baltimore almost burning to the ground? You forgot Ferguson? How about the chaos that he's produced? Did I say in this book, our Constitution has been trampled by a divisive president? Yes, it has been. Did I say that progressive policies and open borders have poisoned America? Yes, I did. Did I ask, are we one bad election away from losing everything? Yes. And hundreds of thousands of you went and bought the book. That means a multiple of that read the book. That means you are the defining difference between Trump winning and Trump losing. And that is why I wrote Scorched Earth. This is the book that did it. Now, if you want to call this book propaganda, go ahead and do so. But in order to prove it is propaganda, what you have to do is disprove my allegations. Restoring the country after Obama. It's funny how I opened that book with a quote from a French scholar that none of us ever heard of, where he said Roman civilization did not pass peacefully away. It was assassinated. Obama, Hillary, and the radical left have been assassinating the United States of America. Trump comes along, and he tells us everything we want to hear. And tells us everything we want to hear. What was the first thing that Donald Trump said that got your attention? I remember it because I remember very clearly what it was. He said he's going to build that wall. How many times did he say it? Every time he said, I'll build that wall, the crowds got bigger. But he said more than I'll build that wall. He also said he's going to ban the entry of Muslims into the United States of America. Did we not cheer that? Why did we cheer it? Because we're racists? No, it's because we want to live. We don't want to die. There's a story that you have to see that I picked up coming out of Europe, where an 8-year-old Iraqi boy, one of the immigrants to Europe, one of the European nations, tried to plant a bomb in a church. An 8-year-old Iraqi boy. I got to find the story for you. I think it's on my website on michaelsavage.com. I said, here we go again. Is that what you want for immigrants? Here's the story here. 12-year-old Iraqi boy tries to blow up German Christmas market. Reuters. He planted another explosive device near the town hall. Now, who brought this Muslim into Germany and destroyed Germany? Merkel, the psychotic fascist. Merkel, the psychotic fascist who was a twin sister for Hillary Clinton, brought that Iraqi boy into Germany. Germany is now a no-go zone. Sweden is a no-go zone. Every nation that's been invaded by Muslims, by these liberal psychotics, have become no-go zones. So we looked at Europe, those of us who are able to look at these things, and we see the corruption of liberalism. We see the corruption and the suicidal behavior of liberals in Germany or in Sweden or in France, and we say, no, not here. And then along comes a man who says, no, not here. I will prevent Muslims from coming in. And what happens? He's called every name under the sun. But he didn't buckle, did he? He had not buckled, so we voted for him. Isn't that correct? Well, let's see if we get that wall and he bans Muslims from these terror countries, okay? Because those are the two major reasons we voted for him, as well as the economy, stupid. I said, and many of you agreed, that we need a businessman to run the country. I said for 3 or 4 books in a row, we need to run America more like a business. Of course, we can't run a nation only like a business, because businesses are ruthless. Businesses are heartless. Businesses have no feelings. If America was truly run like a business, the poor would starve to death and the crippled would die in the snow. So we can't have a nation run like a business. Corporations are heartless, by and large. They could care less about the next man's welfare. That's the truth of the matter. So no, we can't have a nation run like a business. It could be run a little more business-like, but that's not like running a nation exactly like a business. Well, I pointed all of this out in Scorched Earth because it's a reasonable book written by a reasonable man. And as I said to you, this was a somewhat prophetic book. I told you over and over again that after the 8 divisive years of Barack Obama, there was an irrefutable case of our nation having been undermined by terrorists from within, terrorists from without, anarchists within, a president and politicians with contempt for the Constitution and the law, and by a complicit liberal media. Every one of those words resonated with you. Every one of those words was magnified by candidate Trump, because he had very bright people who would listen to talk radio, and they took notes, and they wrote the speeches, and they gave him the speeches, and thank God I finally found a man who expressed what I believe in, and I'm glad he won. I will always be grateful that he won. I have no complaints whatsoever. However, we must be very cautious, because we see that politics corrupts. We see that politics corrupts absolutely. And we see that the evil Republican National Committee has virtually hijacked the Trump administration from the get-go. They have put let me say this, by putting Reince Priebus into the inner circle, which looks to me like a deal that was done last April or so in order to let Trump win it all. They probably were going to fight him. They told him they wouldn't let him win no matter what he did. He had to work a deal out with them. And the deal was they'd let this Reince come in and represent the RNC in all the dealings and pick all of the appointments by and large. He'd get this, they get that. And so what we're seeing now is the fallout of that deal with the RNC. And many of us understand this. And I feel that I'm obligated to say to you right now, if we don't stand up now, we're going to lose everything within 6 months. The Republicans will take back everything that we voted for unless we vociferously stand up to them from now. And I did so, by the way, as of November 14th. On November 14th, I wrote that article on hijacking the Trump campaign. I know I paid a price for it. I know very well what happened. This is no joke to me. But I am very happy that I helped elect Donald Trump, and I will continue to support Donald Trump. What I will not do is support the evildoers in the Republican Party. It's all in Scorched Earth. The subtitle is very important. Restoring the country after Obama. Have we restored the country after Obama? No, we've done nothing yet. He's not president yet. The wall hasn't been started. The ban on Muslims hasn't been started. The business aspects of the government haven't been created. So far as I know, not one government bureaucrat has been fired. So far as I know, not one department will be eliminated. So our job is enormous for 2017. It is bigger than it was before the election. Do you understand me? What I'm saying to you right now is almost like MacArthur's last words saying, "I shall return." The point is that our battle has just begun. Don't become complacent and settle back and say, "Oh, Trump won, now I can relax." Because as you sleep, every minute you sleep, the creeping nightmare of the Republican Party takes over more and more territory of the Trump administration. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. It is the Savage Nation. The monologue that I just gave you on how the battle has just begun, stopping the RNC from hijacking the Trump victory, will be the theme of my entire show for January 2017. And I want to conclude this segment by reading the last 2 paragraphs of Scorched Earth, because you are them. I wrote, "You are hearing loud outcries against Donald Trump and the rising forceful eddies. You're hearing them described as bigots, racists, anti-women, anti-Semites, and homophobic. But those voices will eventually dim. The shouters will be reduced to the margins, to the marginal characters that they've always been. They'll be put back into the boxes they came from. How do I know this? Because the Eddies will come to our defense one more time. They will stand shoulder to shoulder to honor the legacy of those who built this nation, who fought its wars, who bowed in prayer in a rich variety of faiths, and who raised the families that are the backbone of America. And when they do, I can guarantee you that this nation, that this world, will be a safer place, even for the lunatic fringe. Those are the last words of the prophetic book, Scorched Earth. I will call it a prophetic book because you won't, and it is. And it's the book that got Trump elected. And it's the book that has to keep Trump's feet to the fire. It's not that he's a bad man or that he lied to you. It's that he's being pulled radically to the left by Reince Priebus, who represents the interest that we voted against, in plain English. There's no other way to put it. Did we vote to have Reince Priebus as the chief of staff? You would have laughed at that idea. Did you vote to have Mitch McConnell again dictating how this government should be run? You would have laughed at that idea. You knew he was a backstabber and a phony. He's the guy with the gullet from Kentucky, who the minute he got the coal thing he wanted, he immediately became Obama's best friend, if you remember. So, in other words, he's a classic politician, McConnell. He is now running the show to a great extent. I'm afraid to tell you the truth. Now, I have to conclude in another way. I am an immigrant son. And as an immigrant son, I think every day about immigrants. I think about the refugee crisis. And I have to ask myself every day, they are people. Why do I oppose relocating 100,000 Syrian refugees into this nation? And I have to say that the embarrassing answer is that people will always compare the situation to the Jews in the Holocaust. And that is the underlying motif of the entire liberal establishment. The emotional substratum of this entire argument is based upon the Jews in Nazi Germany, and it's a false argument. It's a false one on many levels. And I'm sure you can figure out why it's false and why the narrative was being used by those who want to flood the United States with refugees for their own reasons. I pointed out on pages 116 and 17 which groups are actually flooding America with refugees. Lutheran Family Services, Catholic Charities. The fact of the matter is, it is not Nazi Germany that they're running from. Many of them are running here for a better life because they can live high on the hog and have the milk and honey without having tended to the cow and to the beehive. And I've preached for many years that ultra-tolerance is killing us, and how we have been brainwashed, and how an entire generation was brainwashed on drugs, on marijuana and other toxic compounds, with skimpy vegan and other inadequate diets, and outright brainwashing, propaganda in the government schools, where they fully believe things that are false as though they are truths. And how these children have no religion but liberalism. And I've been taught to live by the 10 commandments of liberalism, which are, man is evil and poisoned the earth. The earth is a living organism and needs to be protected. All white people are racist. All people of color are good. All refugees should be allowed in and given whatever they request. If people make too much money, it should be taken from them. Government handouts should have no price tag. Nature should be protected at all costs, unless you don't like your gender. Burning the American flag is protected speech. All players on the international stage have equal credibility. Those are the 10 commandments of liberalism in Scorched Earth. And so I wrote, our brainwashed, drugged youth cast their brainwashed, drugged youth votes. We have immigrants who want things for free, who are being legitimized in an illegitimate way. And I go on, and I don't want to read my own book, but I said to you, this is the dissolution of democracy itself under the guise of diversity. And I wrote that diversity is destroying democracy. Isn't that what the election was about? Did we not want a sea change in the culture in the United States of America? That's what I wanted. That's why I virtually killed myself, gave up my life for a year straight to have Donald Trump elected. I sacrificed virtually everything for this. I don't need you to say yes or he's just doing it for ratings. I don't care what you say. I know what cost it took out of me. I know what time I had to put into this thing. And I had to give my soul to get Donald Trump elected. And I can't sit here and say to you that I'm going to sit quietly by and salute everything he does when I see the RNC hijacking the Trump victory left and right. I can't do that, nor should you. There's such a thing as a good friend, just as there's a good family member who says to a family member, now look, I love you, John, but you're not doing the right thing. But as I said at the end of the last segment, this is when our work just begins. We must not permit Rinso Priebus, who represents the worst elements of the Republican Party, to steal from us that which we gained. We must not let them steal the victory that we just gained. And we must continue to express what we want to the incoming Trump administration. Can anyone answer this? I'll say it again because no one heard it. I haven't heard this in the media yet. Maybe it's been said or written about. I don't know. We're hearing that the election was hacked. We hear it from CNN. We hear it from the moron in the government, the morons. Then we hear it from Hillary's camp. If they hacked the election, how did she win the popular vote? Can anyone answer that? It makes no sense. Am I allowed to use common sense or logic to ask a question? No, not in America. University of Wisconsin offer a class on the problem of whiteness. Now, in the face of it, that's a racist thing to do. The goons, the left-wing goons who are doing this, to offer a class on the problem of whiteness are by definition stone-hearted racists. But it's being offered by the university's so-called African Cultural Studies Department. And what it really means to be white and how race is experienced by white people. Critical whiteness studies, they call. Do you have any idea that this is the most racially charged, racist kind of thing you could ever imagine? And do you understand that African cultural studies have nothing to do with promoting racism in America? But this is what happens. When you put idiots into any department, they'll still be an idiot. You can still put a cap and gown on a moron and still be a moron. What, everyone belongs in college?
Savage.
Congressional calls for a probe of Russian hacking. He won't let it go. The loser, Lindsey Graham, the worst man in the Senate, the absolute worst, craziest man in the history of the Senate. He's worse than Harry Reid. This is a real Benedict Arnold. Are you listening to this? Lindsey Graham is calling for a probe. They won't let go of the Russian hacking still. Okay, we got a great defense chief in Mattis. We got a great DHS chairman in John Kelly as opposed to the Wall Street phony. Good riddance, let him go back to what he knows best, which is whatever. We got a new fast food executive, Andy Puzder, as labor secretary, who's against the minimum wage. I guess he'll create jobs as a result. Now, I, by the way, have a different opinion on the minimum wage than he does and than many of you so-called conservatives do. It's easy to say I'm against the minimum wage in principle. Let the market determine the price of labor. You know, that's easy to say when you're a millionaire talk show host. But if you're working for minimum wage, would you like to see the wage go down and then argue that it's free market capitalism? What do you want people to live on? What do you want them to live on? Have you tried to work for minimum wage? See, lucky for me, I was poor when I was young, and I worked for minimum wage. I didn't like it. I would rather have made what the owner made. He didn't make that much, by the way, in the little businesses I worked in, whether it was a pharmacy, a one-man pharmacy, or a luncheonette. But the fact is I took the job because I was glad to get it. So I made minimum wage. And you know what the object of minimum wage is? Is to make you want to make more money. In other words, you say, I can't stand this stinking job working at a minimum wage job. So what you do is you struggle to get a job where you earn more than the minimum wage. In other words, you learn some skill to make more money. It motivates you to want to pull yourself up from the bottom of the labor scale. It's that simple. But on the other hand, what would you like to see? Child labor reintroduced, all of you genius conservatives? Or let the market determine the price of labor. That's socialism to dictate minimum wage. So what would you like them to exploit children in factories and make them work for $1 an hour around the clock with no sleeping and no food? Would you like to go back to Dickens times? So there has to be some bottom to a labor cost. You can't just let it be driven into the ground. We can see what the pigs in Silicon Valley are doing, throwing American workers out of jobs to bring in people from India to pay them less money. Is that what you want going on across America? So be very careful with your theories. Unless you yourself have worked for a minimum wage, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But if you're born into a family that took care of you from birth until you graduated from graduate school or medical school or law school, you don't know anything about what you're talking about. You need to have worked 2 minimum wage jobs to know what I'm talking about. You need to have ridden the bus in the slush to 2 jobs and then gone to school to know what I'm talking about. You need to know what it's like to raise a family while working 2 jobs and sleeping 5 hours a night to know what I'm talking about. But on the other note, I love the generals. I sleep better at night. I am so happy to hear that Trump picked a retired General John Kelly to head Homeland Security instead of this Wall Street lawyer, Jay Johnson, who permitted one terrorist attack after another without getting fired. It's time we had real hard men in our security apparatus. Don't you agree? But the liberals are terrified right away. Oh, generals. Oh, Argentina. Oh, there's going to be a coup. Oh, they're going to round us up. Oh, they should be rounded up in their own minds. They know better than we do what they've done and what they like to do. It's their own paranoia projecting back on them like a boomerang. What are they afraid of the generals for? Look at what we have now under Obama. A general who can't fire a rifle. An Air Force secretary who can't fly a plane. A Navy secretary who can't steer a rowboat. Thank God that we have these military veterans coming into power. It's just great news. I don't walk around fearing that it's all coming to an end. I don't walk around looking at little white children, to be honest with you, seeing future slaves anymore. Did you know that? Did you know that that's what I used to see? I'd walk around and look at little white children, I'd shake my head and I'd say, if this doesn't stop, these children will be slaves in their own nation. Take a look at what they're doing to the kids at the campuses. Look what they're doing to your beautiful baby when they get into college. Look what they're doing to them if they happen to have been born as Caucasian. Look at the evil communists and their indoctrination and what they do to them every day with lies about white privilege. The brainwashing is a form of psychological warfare to make them hate themselves for being themselves. That's what they've done to your children in this country. Now, the academic bureaucrats have to be purged in this nation. Yeah, that's right, you heard me. It's going to take a long time, a very long time, until the climate of the culture of this nation is finally changed. But change it must for this country to survive. But the fact of the matter is, I wrote about Mattis a couple of years ago. It was in October of 2014 that I published a book entitled Stop the Coming Civil War. I was raising the red flags about Obama, how he had purged more than 200 U.S. military officers at the rank of colonel or higher since he became president. In 2009, he had fired over 200 U.S. military officers, replacing them with useless puppets. And one of those fired by this communist president of ours, this Castroite, was General James Mattis. Who is James Mattis? First of all, he's a great Marine. He's the former head of CENTCOM. In January of 2013, Castro's cousin, Fidel Obama, dismissed Mattis, the general, for being too much of a hawk, especially when it came to the administration's lenient policy toward Iran. The fact of the matter is, Mattis understood how dangerous a nuclear-armed Iran would be to our allies and to U.S. interests in the Middle East, and he was not afraid to speak out. Mattis, who once famously said, quote, and I can't say the whole sentence here, it's on page 61 of the book, he said, there are some AHs in the world who just need to be shot. And he was known among his peers as someone who could defend the military in its ongoing dialogue with government functionaries. Both soldiers and civilians respected the general, and he wasn't about to kowtow to anyone. He was exactly the type of commander that Obama both shrinks from and does all he can to remove. Why do you think Obama removed Mattis? You have an idea why he threw him out? The general had received a note from one of his own aides telling him he was being replaced as the head of Central Command. Not one of the low-life weakling stooges from the Pentagon or the communist White House was gracious enough to inform him about this. I can relate to that. That's what they do to big men. I've seen it happen in my own life just recently. They're afraid of men like us. And so the sneaks in the night have underlings do it for them. But then eventually the men like me come back to the surface, and the underlings run like the cockroaches they are when the light is shown upon their behavior. Others fired were two of our top nuclear commanders, Major General Michael Carey, Vice Admiral Tim Giardina. Both left the armed forces within days of each other, both because of personal misconduct. According to reports and emails leaked to the press, they were not even given a trial. The girls around Obama, the girls he put uniforms on, the fake tin warriors that Obama put into the Pentagon did this to them. The official report on General Carey's dismissal says this. They said that while on temporary assignment in Moscow, the general went on a vodka-drinking binge one night, and he needed assistance standing at one point. Can you believe this? And he had tried to get up on stage with a Beatles cover band in a Mexican restaurant in Moscow. And that was the reason to fire a combat general? Yes, if you're one of the cowards in a uniform who really belongs as an usher in a movie theater. Do you know who this man was? And do you know why he was really fired? I have it all for you on the Savage Nation, because maybe we have hope to restore our military after this communist regime is finally thrown out of office. Do you know who this man was, General Michael Carey? The man who was thrown out for drinking vodka and dancing on a stage? At the time he was fired by the girls in the band, he was commander of the 20th Air Force, responsible for all 450 of the Air Force's Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles located in 5 U.S. states. You know who else he is? Prior to that, General Carey actually served in both the Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom operations. He was also the recipient of no fewer than 13 major military awards and decorations. And the vermin in Obama's Defense Department, the fakers in uniform, threw him out. Carey is an American hero, and yet he was relieved of duty for drinking vodka in Russia. Was it not possible for the Air Force to provide an officer with Carey's credentials some sort of rehabilitation for the alleged alcohol problems instead of firing him? I hope that Donald Trump and General Mattis get together and bring back General Michael Carey next. But now I'll go to the next one. Who else did the communist president fire? Tim Giardina. Now, all of this has been lost by you. Most of you don't know this, but I remember everything. I record everything. I absorb everything. I sort everything. And I put it into my books. So let me read what else you need to know about Giardia. Scorched Earth took it from here. Charges against Vice Admiral Giardina were no less fantastic. Do you know who he is? Fired by the cretin in the White House? Giardina was a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, a 3-star admiral who was the former deputy commander-in-chief and staff of the Pacific Fleet. Now, I wrote, you'd think that if you were going to relieve someone of this stature of his command and reassign him to a desk job, you'd come up with serious charges related to the performance of his duty. But in a move that had to be approved by the president, the sneak himself, Giardina was demoted for having played poker with counterfeit $100 chips in the Horseshoe Casino in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Now, that was never proven, by the way. That's number one. In other words, both of these commanders who have outstanding military records and who have risen to the tops of their commands were dismissed on charges that, in my opinion, would likely have gotten an enlisted man no more than a slap on the wrist. Or let us say one of the girls he put into office. Do you know who the Secretary of the Navy is? Do you know the Secretary of the Air Force has never flown an airplane? Do you know that? One commentator described it this way. This move is exceedingly rare and perhaps unprecedented in the history of U.S. Strategic Command, which is responsible for all U.S. nuclear warfighting forces, including nuclear-armed submarines, bombers, and land-based missiles. So why did Obama purge them? I have the other names of the military men who may be coming back to defend this great nation now that we have swept out or will soon sweep out these turncoat rats that Obama has put in. But Donald Trump is going to need our help every step of the way. Thank God he started at the top and he put Mattis back where he belongs. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. It is the Savage Nation. I can recommend a good travel agent for the thousands of Islamists waiting to kill our children who have been getting away with virtual murder because of Jay Johnson and Barack Obama and the other quislings in this government who sit there with their hands shaking saying, oh, no, 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 no. You must tolerate all religions. No, no, no. No, no, no. Wait until I kill someone till you say anything, and then don't say Islam. Don't say Muslim. I have one piece of advice for all of you listening, which is I know a good travel agent for all of you. His name is retired Marine General John Kelly. Give him a quick call and let him know what your plans are, because maybe he can help you get there faster. So listen to what the liberals are doing now. Retired General Kelly gave a speech 4 days after his son was killed in Afghanistan serving the nation. And in the speech, he said their struggle is your struggle. This is after his son was dead. And he gave the speech honoring the sacrifices made by America's armed forces, and particularly the Marines. And he said, their struggle is your struggle, said General Kelly. They disdain those who claim to support them, but not the cause that takes their innocence, their limbs, and their lives. He said, as a democracy, we must support them. I know it doesn't apply to anyone in this room today, but if anyone thinks you can somehow thank them for their service and not support the cause for which they fight, our country, then these people are lying to themselves and rationalizing away something in their own lives. But more importantly, they are slighting our warriors and mocking their commitment to this nation. Well, they went crazy. They're calling it a troubling quote in the Washington Post. The ACLU had the nerve to say this. Senators should look closely at this speech and its implications, said Christopher Anders, deputy director of the so-called ACLU in Washington, D.C. He said, as Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, General Kelly will have an obligation to tolerate and respect the wide range of values and views of our big country. Oh, hey, I could write a whole book on that one. Let's say a whole chapter on your wide range of values. You know what your values are? You know what I'd like to do to your values? You know what I know what your word for tolerance means? I can't say it's a family show. So I can't wait for the hearings, the confirmation hearings for General Kelly, which will take place next year when the new Congress takes over. I intend to be on the radio telling you who the enemies of America are. I will name them. I will tell you who they are. I'll tell you what they're going to say. And we're going to support General Kelly from top to the bottom. We're going to deliver a blizzard of emails in support of General Kelly, and we will shame all of those who try to stop him from taking this most important job, especially after all these years of Jay Johnson, who has permitted one terrorist attack after another without being fired by Mr. Hussein, his boss. So Obama is in front of Fareed Zakaria, the guy with the bug eyes. Zakaria, let's put it this way, is not one of my favorite people on CNN. Now, that's an oxymoronic statement, just to say not one of my favorite people on CNN, because there are no people on CNN. So I can't have any favorite people. There's just ghouls. There's just left-wing fanatics on CNN. Zakaria is perhaps the craziest of all of them. And that's why he and the president have such a harmony with each other. They kind of vibe each other. They belong in the same vibration. So here is clip 4 of the two bug jobs, Zakaria and Hussein, talking about Obama's legacy on the Savage Nation.
Let me ask you if it's possible in your position to be completely honest and say the rise of the Islamic State surprised you. It took you by surprise. It took the administration by surprise.
The ability of ISIL to initiate major land offensives, that was not on my intelligence radar screen.
What does that mean? Does anyone understand when Obama speaks in jargon? He can't say anything correctly or straight. Everything's a twisted statement. How do you think he became president? By being honest? He became president by knowing how to twist the truth and never say anything that's real. That's all.
Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show. The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
Let me tell you something about what's coming on my show. I'm liberated. I'm a liberated talk show host. I don't care what my ratings are, because I found out something 20 years ago when I started in radio. If the host is interested in the topic and can project that interest, which they call passion today, everything's passion. That's the latest corporate word. Oh, he has a passion for this. Well, anyway, if you have a passion for something in radio, people are going to enjoy the show. They'll listen to you. If you're just mailing it in and reading headlines from the Drudge Report, let me tell you something. There's a limit to how much of that anyone could take. So I'm going to go with what's of interest to me. I'm interested in saving the whales. I talked about saving the whales. I had a man on who put his life on the line for the last 20 years from Sea Shepherd. I thought it was one of my better shows. I'm sure that the diehard knee-jerk conservatives didn't like it because it wasn't anything about George Washington's false teeth. I get that. But I'll take my risks and do the things I have to do. And so today I'm going to talk about sexual assault. I know it's not about Trump. I know it's not about Trump Tower. I know it's not about the elevator. It's not about who's being appointed to what. It's not about the rumors of this and the rumors of that, the rumblings of this, the rumblings of that. It's about sexual assault. There's a show I like on television called The Affair. I don't know whether it's on Showtime or HBO. I don't remember. And I just happened to stumble upon season 3. I was kind of bored of it after season 2, but season 3's gotten much better. Writing is superb. Directing, great. Acting, terrific. So in one of the scenes from The Affair, the lead figure has just come out of jail he allegedly committed homicide. He's out of jail. He's a college teacher at a small college somewhere, I guess. And he's at a dinner party with a couple of graduate students and a female professor from France, professor of medieval love or something, I don't know, medieval romance. And they start to discuss sexuality and sexual assault. It is so well written. It is so well written that it got me off my chair. I said, Teddy, this is good stuff. And I said, I'm going to play a little bit of this from the show, The Affair, on my show, at the risk of offending those who want to hear what's on the latest website. Trump did this, Trump did that, Zuckerberg did this, the electors did that. How much could you take of that? I can't take any more of it. Russia did this, Russia didn't do that. Will they block it on Monday? Will the celebs call for a coup? Will Zuckerberg show up? Will he get a new undershirt? He'll be appointed czar of Trump Tower? We don't know. I can't do it anymore. It's done. The election is over. He won. He will do what he wants. It's that simple. Now, what do you want to talk about this for? I don't. So I'm going to talk about the things that interest me. I'm going to ask you, women, were you the victim of sexual assault? Men, have you ever been falsely accused of sexual assault? What were the circumstances? What did it do to your life? But before I do, I'm going to play for you a clip from Showtime's show, The Affair, where there is this imaginary conversation about sexual consent, sexual assault, in the setting of a dinner party. So let's listen to clip number 2 on the Savage Nation.
For God's sakes, Audrey, nobody's condoning rape. We're just saying that the term sexual assault is so expansively used now that it dilutes public outrage for the very crime you're trying to prosecute.
Really, Mike? Because a woman who cries sexual assault might just be looking for attention? Or maybe she was confused. Maybe she really did want it.
Maybe she did. Maybe she did, and then maybe she regretted it later. I mean, I've certainly regretted sleeping with certain people. But when I do, I don't bring a disciplinary charge against them.
You, Cornwall.
Oh, well, you know, you ladies, not you, Professor, but you two are on a witch hunt.
Excuse me?
Yes, you are. You are, and I get it. No, I get it. You've been victims of this systematized patriarchal oppression for many years now, but that doesn't give you the right to terrorize us.
Terrorize you.
Terrorize, yes. I feel terrified to touch a woman at a party now, especially if she's had a drink, because if I take her home, right, and I her, the next morning I wake up and I don't tell her that I love her or that I want to marry her, she can literally prosecute me.
Okay, I stopped listening at the part where she f***ed you because that's when your story lost all credibility.
Professor Blake.
He's right. All this talk of consent is just demoralizing.
Demoralizing?
It's confusing.
It's not that confusing. Ask her what she wants.
I don't want to ask her.
Why the f*** not?
Because asking isn't sexy.
Professor Legal, you must have an opinion about this.
Professor Legal is an expert in courtly love. And I'm pretty sure that Lancelot never asked Guinevere permission to...
Truly, Mike, if that's what you think, then you haven't been paying enough attention in my lectures. In courtly love, the woman is always in charge. She is the lord and master, and the knight is her servant. And even when he cannot consummate his passion, as is often the case, the very act of loving her enriches his life and improves his nobility.
Huh. Imagine that, Mike. A man loving a woman who he doesn't get to...
That's not true. All right? You said erotic love. I wrote down the word erotic in my notebook. I circled it 3 times.
But erotic doesn't always mean physical. Sometimes the woman invites the man into her bed, and he's not allowed to touch her. Is there anything more erotic than that?
You want to know what my problem is with courtly love? It's just exhausting for the guys.
Yes.
I mean, all those ordeals to prove their ardor and commitment. Joust upon joust. I mean, stop baking. Just give me the bacon, baby.
Bacon!
That's it. So, right?
All right, you could see why I was interested in this show. But it was more than just my amusement. I said, this is a national talk show that I have. Why can I not talk about a topic as incendiary as sexual assault, since it's on everyone's mind, especially younger people? I am not talking about the over 50 crowd, which grew up in a different generation. The over 50 crowd grew up with a whole different set of rules between men and women. And the rules were, well, I don't know if I can spell them out, but you know and I know, if you're over 50, your views of sexuality are much different than that of the people in their 20s right now. We don't exactly know what their rules are. We seem to think that they kind of do it in the road. It's sort of the Beatles song. Whatever they want to do, they do with whoever they want to do, whenever they want to do it, and there are no boundaries. Those of us who came up in another time had totally different ideas about women, if we're men, and different ideas about men, I guess, if we're women. And I can't spell the rules out for you. I frankly come from a Neanderthal age where, truthfully, it was a very sexist universe that I grew up in. Women largely either were homemakers or subservient to their husbands or to their boyfriends. Men were the dominant party. That was the role model that I grew up in. And any man who couldn't live up to that macho rule was considered to be, well, not quite a man. Well, we found out that that's a myth. And, by the way, for the betterment of most of humanity, we found out that that was a myth, because it's a segmented set of rules that don't really apply to most people, just to some people. And now we come to a new age in this whole issue of sexual assault. We know that it's gotten out of hand to a certain extent. We know that a professor, for example, can have his life ruined by a student who doesn't like him simply for saying he touched me inappropriately. Well, maybe he did touch her inappropriately, but maybe he didn't touch her inappropriately. Here at the University of California at Berkeley, some of the finest professors that the world has ever seen, real professors, fine professors in real sciences, have had their lives ruined by liars who made stuff up. Everyone knows they made it up, and yet the witch hunt went on. The men were thrown out of their jobs simply by being accused. It's a form of sexual fascism. This is not to say that there is no such thing as sexual assault. Don't get me wrong. And that's why I think this is a great topic. And I hope you'll join the conversation and enlighten the listeners to the program. Has the fear of being accused of doing something criminal stopped you from a relationship with a woman? As a woman, do you prefer a man who is more masculine or more sensitive? In an intimate relationship, who is really in charge? And by the way, does it really matter? And by the way, if the sensitivity about consent is so strong these days, why are such sexually charged romance novels and books so popular today? How does the subject of consent affect people who want to start a family and get married? Is it ruining the chance to even meet a woman and get married? It's becoming quite common in our society to know that there is no safe place for women anywhere. Whether they're at work, commuting, home, gym, etc., they all feel put upon. You all know it's true. Many men go to the gym to work out and also to look at the women in the whatever those tight things. I forget what they call them. What do they call it? Yoga pants. The yoga pant thing. Now, okay, so they feel like they're being sexually assaulted. So you could argue, why do they wear the tight pants? But that's blaming the victim, isn't it? Shouldn't a woman be able to wear what she wants? I mean, a man is not supposed to look at her if she's wearing tight pants and she's got a great body or what? So is this an epidemic? And if it is, what's the solution? What would be fair and equitable? The issue is, have you been the victim of sexual assault, really? Because that's what we're talking about. Men, have you been falsely accused and had your life ruined? Women think that they're assaulted wherever they go, that they're unsafe. There's, like the girls in college today, everything's an unsafe space. They all want safe spaces. Well, what would be a safe space? No men left in the world? Men put in a prison camp? Then you have safe spaces? What is it you want? People are asking. And that's why I'm playing this today, because it's a sociological question. It's actually quite political, incidentally. It has nothing to do with Trump now. Zero to do with Trump. Zero to do with Obama. Zero to do with Alinsky. Can't say socialist. I know someone will work it in. Socialists did it to destroy man and woman. Actually, they did. But okay, I won't go into Karl Marx's description of man and woman and how bourgeois it was and how family was bourgeois. That's a whole separate story for another time. I've written about it. I'm filibustering politics for today. What are you listening to talk radio for? To take home another nugget of information? Go learn it. Do me a favor. Go learn another thing that I would have fallen asleep in high school listening to this stuff. The whole idea of an electoral college and a popular vote and a this and a that, who he's appointing, who's in, who's out, who's in the elevator, who came down from the elevator, who went up in the elevator, who smiled at him, who was at the meeting, who wasn't at the meeting, who was with Bezos. Did Bezos have a glass eye? Why was Facebook not there? Was he there? Was the undershirt really there? Was he hiding in the background? Who served the coffee? Who served the tea? Who's in? Who's out? Is that of any interest to you? Like a gossip column. The guy isn't even president yet, and we're obsessed with him. It's a continuation of the obsession with Obama now. Now the obsession's on Trump. Every pimple, every move of his face now. He put on weight, he took off weight. He blinked, he didn't blink, he's moving, he's not moving. She's with him, she's not with him. Who's press secretary? Monica's in, Monica's out. That one's in, Monica's out. Monica was moved. She can be press secretary. Now she's going to be VA secretary. No, national security. No, I'm sorry, they're going to San Francisco for press secretary. No, she's not taking it. She is taking it. They were going to take it. She was going to give it, but she's not blonde enough, so she's not getting it. Is that what you want to talk about? Just like a gossip column. No, I'm talking about sexual assault. Were you the victim of sexual assault? Yes or no? Were you falsely accused? Yes or no? That's all. Drain the swamp. Listen to the Savage Nation. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. The old weather is at us again. It's that global warming, 106-mile-an-hour tornado force winds recorded in the Sierra Nevada, for those of you who've been to Lake Tahoe. It's that old global warming. Don't tell that to the bureaucrats in Washington or in Sacramento. I'm sure Jerry Brown and his weather cohorts up there, locked down as they are in their bunker of reality, don't even know that there's a rainstorm outside. They're still pushing out the metaphor of drought and global warming. Let's hope all of this changes with the new administration, because, boy, do we need a change from the insanity. I'd rather talk about sexual assault and consent in today's world. I think it's an interesting topic. It was triggered by the show The Affair, which I said, I didn't like season 1 or 2 that much. I liked 1, 2 wasn't that good. 3 is better than all of them. The writing is better. The acting is better. The directing is better. A lot of women are writing the segments, which is what's making it a little more, nuanced, to use an overused word about nuance. And we're talking about sexual assault. Were you sexually assaulted for real? What is sexual assault? What are the new definitions of sexual assault? Or men are being falsely accused all over this country. As I've said to you on campuses, if a man is targeted by radical feminists for his lack of being politically correct, they can make stuff up. Now, maybe in some cases it's true. Maybe some of these professors were so-called inappropriate to some of their female students. I wasn't there. But to destroy a man by simply saying j'accuse, we're living in fascism as a result of radical feminism. But there is real sexual assault. Let's not lose that. Someone wrote this to me anonymously and said regarding sexual assault, I doubt it has become more common. We just have more record of the occurrences because of increased legal protection and consequent increased awareness and openness about the occurrences and the effects. Then this individual writes, how does this subject relate to our spirituality and about sexuality? And so we're talking about that. And people misinterpreting what I said about the burqa. I wasn't saying that women should wear burqa to prevent sexual assault, because as someone pointed out, women are still raped in the Middle East while wearing burqas. For that matter, they're being raped in Europe wearing burqas. So we're not blaming women for wearing short skirts or tight pants or yoga pants. That's not the purpose of the show. It's a sociological question that goes to the heart of our society today. And that's why I'm talking about it. Just as a side note, that murderous lowlife Dylan Roof was convicted in the racially motivated church massacre. You talk about a lack of justice. No matter what is done to him, the one who killed all of those innocent black people, no matter what is done to white nationalist Dylan Roof is not sufficient from my point of view. Where's the justice in this? He was convicted of 33 hate crime charges against him in the Charleston church massacre trial. That's justice? These nice black people praying in the historic Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in 2015. He said he hoped to start a race war. Well, what's going to happen now, I don't know. Should he be executed? Oh, he should be executed, but not humanely. No, he should be released into an all-black wing of the worst prison in South Carolina, and the guard should be given an hour off. Now, you know that's never going to happen. So there's no justice in our justice system. We know that. Wherever you turn, there's no justice. So now let's analyze this. We have a society that has been basically Hollywoodized, where the skirts got shorter and tighter, and the lipstick got brighter and brighter, and the blouses got tighter and tighter, until eventually it was like a striptease show everywhere you turned in America. Then along comes a new influence in American society and in the West in general. Let's forget the suicide bombings. Let's forget the radical fanatics. Don't you think that this is a leavening agent in the other direction, that is the more modest way of dress? You know what's on my mind? Here we are. The holidays are upon us. We already had the wonderful family event. Many of you had a good time. Some of you had family time, which was not very good. And these are very stressful times. It's well known amongst psychologists that these are about the most stressful times for many people in America. Not only because they have to be with people they despise, mainly members of their family who they never see. They're thrown like in an obscure way into a room with people they have nothing in common with except DNA. And so the politics don't match. Nothing matches. And then it's very uncomfortable for most people unless they're a close-knit family that live near each other and, somewhereville. And it still exists, I guess, but that's one stress. And the other stress, it's a big one, a very big one, is the issue of being alone during the holidays. See, a lot of Americans have no families. They've moved away because they were marching to a different drummer. And because they marched to a different drummer and they were so wild and free, and they moved to Berkeley, that they have nobody to be with around these holidays. So they use more drugs than normal. Let's say on a normal day they use one line, now they use 3. Or let's say they hit the crack pipe once a week, now they hit it 5 times a week. Or let's say they're a sex addict. Instead of random sex with strangers, once a week, it's 5 times a week around the holidays and double on Christmas Eve. And so all the addictions are now flaring to the surface. And as the days of December increase in number, and again, family time, and it freaks a lot of people out, so they revert to their addictions, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, or sexuality. And I touched on sex addiction. It was a very interesting show. I know many people enjoyed it, and they enjoyed it because they like hearing other people who are crazier than them. The reason that they like stories about addiction and having people call about addiction is because they feel more stable. And so the reason I talked about sex addiction was because Anthony Weiner, remember him? Huma Abedin, vaguely remember? Huma Abedin, Hillary Clinton's #1 aide, is married to a certifiable maniac, Anthony Weiner, who can't keep his hands off as you know what. And so he was instead of being sent to prison and their child taken away from them, as would happen to you, if you're a man and you are seen in a picture that you took of yourself on a phone, touching yourself in underwear while your child is next to you, you go to jail for 30 years and your child's taken away. But because he's connected to the authorities in New York and the federal government, nothing happened to him. So he's back home after rehab. And I say to myself, wait a minute, they sent him to rehab in Tennessee? And what was the rehab for sex addiction? He rode a horse, and he took long walks in the woods. You hear him talk to other people with the same problem, day and night indulging himself. Probably cost $30,000 a day. I don't know what it costs, a thing like this. But he's not cured. And my allegation is that treatment doesn't work anyway. By and large, treatment does not work for addictions. The only thing that works for addictions is a person who says to themselves, I'm a disgusting piece of garbage, and I'm going to stop doing this. In other words, only when you get disgusted with yourself and you hate yourself enough will you change. Nothing else will change you. All the rehab in the world is nonsense. It's a money mill. So I invited people who were addicts to call the show. And I thought that the sex addict calls were quite good. And again, I invite you, if you want to share your story, maybe you'll help someone else. Some people called and said, they're calling. I said, why would you call a national show when your wife doesn't know that you're a sex addict? And the guy would say, I don't even know why I'm calling. I said, come on, you're probably pulling my leg. It's a fake call. You don't know if people just want to be on the radio and hear their voice, or it's somebody, in the business trying to get on. Who knows? But I think it can be enlightening, and I also think it can be entertaining, and I also think that maybe it'll help people understand that they're not alone, that part of the human condition is to be flawed, and that we're all flawed. And to one degree or another, we're all broken creatures. And to one degree or another, we're all freaking out around holidays. We know we're supposed to feel great, and many of us don't. We feel worse than we normally do. You walk around the malls and everyone with the bells and the dingling and the stores and the running and the shopping. And for a moment, maybe there's a little high on the shopping. I went to a mall the other day, and there was the Salvation Army guy, gave him a $5 bill. I felt good giving me a $5. I wanted to put it in his hand rather than the bucket. I could hardly get the $5 into the bucket, by the way. A little advice to the Salvation Army people, make the slits a little bigger. But nevertheless, I felt bad for the guy. The Salvation Army, out of all the organizations, is the only one that I think does any real good. So far as I know, the Salvation Army is not like Catholic Charities. They're not bringing in Muslims from Syria. So far as I know, the Salvation Army is not like Lutheran Family Services or Jewish Family Services, which are front groups for immigration mafioso. Fundamentally, in my estimation. So I put a $5 in it. A big deal. I'm going to go to heaven for it? No. He said, thank you. No one else put a dime in his cup. Why is it no one gives them any money? What is wrong with people? Why are they so cheap? They'd rather go buy a cappuccino for $5? These are reformed alcoholics and drug addicts in those places. And the fact is people suffer greatly from their addictions. And now in America, with the legalization of marijuana, which is the greatest mistake the nation has ever made, because I've said to you before, marijuana is one of the most toxic drugs on the planet. It is a gateway drug. And since it is largely legalized, the weak people who are going to be getting marijuana as much as they want are going to need a bigger kick. So they're going to go to harder drugs. They're going to use more cocaine. They're going to use more crack cocaine. They're going to use fentanyl. They're going to use street drugs, because marijuana is no longer the wild, crazy drug it once was. Here's the thing. I don't want to see people in prison for smoking marijuana, but I don't want to see people thinking that marijuana is a benign or harmless drug. There's an idiot called Jesse Ventura. You may remember him. Remember Jesse Ventura? He sounds deranged. He has a show on an unknown television channel owned by Russia. I saw it. He was pushing marijuana like it was the greatest thing on the planet. I don't understand how people don't understand. The toxicants in marijuana smoke are more dangerous than those in cigarette smoke. How do they not know that? Just from the medical point of view, toxins are more abundant in marijuana than in tobacco. It's been studied over and over again. Ammonia levels 20 times higher in dope. Hydrogen cyanide, HCN. Nitrogen-related chemicals 3 to 5 times higher in dope than in tobacco. The fertilizer used in the marijuana plants, nitrogen-based fertilizer, could have affected the results. That is true. There are certain factors that have to be looked at. But even though marijuana does not contain nicotine and tobacco does not contain cannabinoids, which include THC, marijuana's active ingredient, tobacco, we know, has long been linked to cancer and other health problems. And we know that marijuana smoke per se has not been tied to cancer in the past. However, Does it make sense to you to inhale hot smoke into your lungs and not to expect damage done to your lungs? So now the next question is, no, you may say, okay, that's reasonable. I won't smoke marijuana. I'll just ingest it in a brownie. All right, so you're going to ingest it in a brownie. So you're ingesting it to get high, not to cure a disease, right? I mean, if you just wanted to use the active ingredients that alleviate arthritis or multiple sclerosis or any of the other conditions that people are using it for, why do you need to get high? Why do you need to be addicted to the high as opposed to just using the active principles in marijuana that could help your illness? See, so there's a connection between the getting high here that I don't like, because I think getting high is extremely dangerous in a population in that it tends to make people stupider, not smarter. When you walk around stoned all the time, you start thinking as they do in San Francisco, or the way they think in Berkeley, and they accept virtually anything except nationalism or love for nation. Everything else is acceptable to people who are high all the time. And so it's a very dangerous thing to do, is to be high all the time on something. And to me, the best high, by the way, is being straight. That's the highest high there is. It's the toughest one to achieve on a regular basis. It's not the one that's glorified by Harvey Weinstein or Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg. I understand that. But fundamentally, all these having fake sex, smoking fake marijuana, and then having a fake cigarette. And you wonder why children are confused. I'm not confused as to why the children are confused. I know why they're confused. But look, I don't want to see people in prison for smoking marijuana. And I got to tell you again, I speak from personal experience and as a trained scientist with some background in phytochemistry. So I know what I'm talking about, but you don't have to be a genius to go look it up. Look up toxins in marijuana smoke. See what you can find on your own. I think you'd be quite surprised to find out that marijuana is perhaps the most dangerous thing you could put in your body, next to cyanide itself. I don't know why you'd want to do it, but okay, if you want to kill yourself, don't say I didn't warn you. And you know and I know that even though you're using marijuana regularly, let's say, and it's legal now everywhere, most everywhere, you know and I know that because it's largely legalized, you're going to need a bigger kick. And that you're going to start going for the harder drugs as a result. You know it and I know it. It's just the way of human life. But I'd rather not get stuck on the marijuana thing, because if you want to look up toxicants in marijuana, you can do it on your own. And if you don't want to believe it, you don't want to read the research and accept it, I can't help you. There's nothing I can do about that. But all right, that's what people do. Look, as a former anthropologist, there are rituals in all societies. I remember when I was studying the New Guinea Highlanders, and I'm talking a long time ago. Today they're not like New Guinea Highlanders anymore because of the advent of visitors and television. They're not like they were. But New Guinea Highlanders would have once a year a pig festival. All year long they would raise the pigs in the village. The whole year they wouldn't slaughter one of them. And then one day, over a weekend, a couple of days, they'd kill every pig in the village and eat the pig meat and just eat. That was what they did. That's what I see when I walk around a mall. I chuckle to myself and I say, well, I guess they're slaughtering the pigs here in America now. So it's cultural. And as a cultural relativist, meaning I've seen so many different cultures in my travels, in my reading, in my life, you know, I accept almost anything. I almost accept all human behaviors if they don't bother anybody else. They don't bother children, they don't bother the next guy. I don't care what people do, to be honest with you. It's like, do I sit in judgment? Of course I do. So do you. You sit in judgment of me, most of you. You're sitting listening to me. Are you critically listening to me? Of course you are. If you like me, you're listening to me critically to see if I make sense. If you don't like me, you're looking for me to fall off the high wire and kill myself. So you're all judgmental, especially you liberal phonies. You're the most judgmental people on the planet. We, the American people, know exactly what's going on. We know that the neocon ventriloquists, with their puppet in the White House, wants a limited war with Russia. It's good for business. Well, we the American people don't want any damn war. We've had enough wars to last the rest of our lives. And we can't wait until this scourge leaves the White House and goes on to what his reward will be, which will no doubt be his friends at the United Nations, who could not exist without troubles around the world. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. There's a judge in San Francisco who just had to explain why 66,000 arrest warrants were thrown in the garbage. A so-called chief judge of San Francisco, which is a laughingstock, said he and his legal eagle colleagues threw away 66,000 arrest warrants for quality of life crimes such as sleeping on the sidewalk. What else did they do? Being drunk in public. Oh, urinating on sidewalks. They threw them in the garbage. And that's because the judge, Jon Stewart, the good liberal, defended the court's action Tuesday by saying, you're putting somebody in jail because they're poor and can't pay a fine. We got a lot of criticism, but we thought it was the right thing to do. My friends, are you listening to what I just said? Did you hear what I just said to you? That they've thrown these tickets in the garbage for people who've urinated on the streets, who have slept on the sidewalk. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Well, I'll put it another way. There's an article in today's rag in the local Bay Area, county by county look at the Bay Area voting for Donald Trump. They think it's a joke, okay? So guess what came out of the look at the 9 counties around San Francisco? Well, of course, the majority voted for the loser, Hillary Clinton. Well, that we know. That you can pretty much figure out. But what you may not know is that the crackpot Jill Stein got more votes in Berkeley, California than Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton won 90% of the vote, while Jill, the troublemaker Stein, received 4.6 of the vote in Berkeley, while Trump got only 3.2% of the vote in Berkeley. So Berkeley has the lowest Trump vote in the nation among cities with populations over 100,000. Not so oddly, Detroit had the fewest amount of votes for Trump, giving him only 3.1% of the vote to Clinton's 95%. And you know why Detroit has the lowest vote for Trump? Muslims, Muslim immigration. Detroit, you know that. So now let's look at the 66,000 arrest warrants thrown out for quality of life crimes in San Francisco. Then look at the people who didn't vote for him. The Savage theorem is simple. In other words, let's make it simple. The higher the liberal quotient, the higher the LQ, the more crime, bums, and feces on the streets. Now, if I said that and it weren't true, it would be offensive. But since I said it and it is true, it might be offensive, but it's also true. So if the truth offends you, it's too bad. What can I say to you? Here's another article related to it. Trump's victory jolts Bay Area minority communities. Oh, boo-hoo. Why is it jolting them? What do you mean Trump's victory jolts them? Muslim, and then they show Muslim, of course, like they represent all of America now. Muslim American somebody with his daughter is worried about a Donald Trump presidency and prays with his son. Isn't that nice? They're the only ones who pray. And he's afraid that they're going to kill us. The words crushed him and left him stunned. He had to put his child to bed holding him, saying, Dad will make sure you're okay, said the father. And then the father said, the climate doesn't seem as peaceful as what you'd want for them. It's not the America I grew up. Oh, you get the whole story. But the fact of the matter is, didn't we have a terrorist attack just the other day from a peace-loving Muslim? Oh, you forgot about it? The story that was not covered by the San Francisco newspapers? The story about the peaceful Muslim who drove his car into a crowd of students and then jumped out with a knife to start stabbing them? And only because this bigoted, psychotic immigrant was stopped by a cop who shot him dead, were other children not stabbed by this bum? So which way does the bigotry run? I'm sick and tired of hearing this upside-down, backwards reflection of this great nation. I am the son of an immigrant. And when my people came here, they didn't come here to stab people in the street and jump the curb with a car and run them over. So don't tell me everybody's innocent and everybody's going to be picked on. Irish were treated worse than dogs. They didn't run around with knives and jump curbs with cars. How come? How come the Irish, who was said dogs and Irish need not apply, didn't pick up knives and start stabbing children in schools? How come? How come they waited online, sometimes 3 generations? Unlike our visitors now who want to go to the head of the class. Boy, do I hope Trump cracks down on them. And I hope that they leave before he does crack down on them. I hear that there's a rush for tickets out of America now.
Savage.